daisies. Oh, bloody hell. That was a bit of a shocker. G'day bangers and welcome back to the 3 Degree of Freedom motion platform simulator build. And this is part 1 of our base plate frame build. What I want to talk about is this pretty little bit of work here at the back of our base plate. This is convoluted, okay, and is not needed. This is a result of the original traction loss plates at the front here that I had that are no longer in operation on the base frame. So you can delete all of that. All you need is a T-piece. You don't need these parts in here. I've just put them in there to pretty it up. You don't need those. You just need the traction loss plate, the spine. You need a stabilizer on the front. And that's all you need, and we're going to talk about how you put this together right now. In the 3 Degree of Freedom motion platform build video part 1A, we talked about our materials list. You'll remember me talking about the fact that you would need 4 meters of 75 by 5 millimeter thick flat steel. This is what our base plate is made of, okay? I recommended that you get 4 meters of that in total in 2 meter lengths. You're going to take one of your 2 meter lengths. You're going to put your tape measure on the very front of it. You're going to measure down 1600 millimeters and you're going to cut it. Okay? You're going to take your 2 meter piece of 75 by 5 millimeter flat steel. You're going to measure down 1600 millimeters on that piece and you're going to mark exactly at 1600. Let me show you how to do this. This is a little off-cut piece I've got of some 75 by 5. And I'm just going to use this to demonstrate what you need to do. So when you've placed your tape measure at the very end of your 2 meter length of 75 by 5, you're going to roll your tape measure out to your 1600 millimeter point. Okay, you're going to get your Sharpie that I recommended in the tools list. Okay, a nice Sharpie. You're going to make a nice clear mark at that 1600 millimeter point. Try not to mark your tape measure like I just did. A nice mark right at 1600 millimeters so you can see it. Okay. You can wind in your tape measure. Then you're going to grab your squares again, which was a recommended purchase for building, okay? Because all of your cutting, you want it to be nice and square and nice and straight right from the get-go. We want our simulator to be nice and symmetrical and square and look as nice as we can. You're going to line your square up on your piece of flat steel. Okay, you're going to take your Sharpie and you're going to hold your. I've got one hand holding the camera, the other here, so I can't do it. But you'll hold your square with one hand so it doesn't move. Then you'll make a nice line. Look at that! I didn't even have to hold the square. If you're gentle, you'll make a nice straight line along where you've marked your 1600, and you're now ready to cut your piece of 2 meter length at that 1600 millimeter mark. I'm going to show you how to cut it. So guys, I'm going to assume that you took my advice and you got yourself a table of some description set up so you don't have to work on the ground. Therefore, you'll be able to cut this sort of off a table, so then you're not going to interfere with the floor or anything. Now, if you don't have a table and you have to work from the floor, that's fine. But what you'll need to do then is you'll need to find yourself a piece of metal block, or just a block of wood is going to be the most common thing you're going to have lying around, or something that you can actually lift your piece up and put the block on so then you can cut through on the ground and not hit the ground. Okay, so that's just a bit of common sense if you're working on the floor. If you're working on a table, happy days. You'll put your leather gloves on, recommended to buy in the tool section. You'll hold one side, the longer side of your 2 meters, because this side you're going to have 400 millimeters left over. And then you're going to take your angle grinder and you're going to put a cutting disc on it. So I recommended that you buy the cutting discs for cutting your metal. I'm assuming that you're going to have some understanding of how to use the angle grinder. These come with a key, okay? They come with a key that slots in to the lock nut into these holes. You'll see on the key here, right? They just lock in like that. And on the back side of all angle grinders, there's a lock. There's a little lock push that you push in, and then that stops this from being able to turn, right? It stops that from being able to rotate. When you push that in, you might have to rotate it around a couple of times till it clicks in, and you keep holding that. Then you place your key in to those holes, and then you'll undo this lock nut. The lock nut will come off, it'll screw off. You'll get your cutting disc, you'll put it on your angle grinder, you'll put your lock nut back on. Again, you'll sort of do it up as tight as you can until the whole piece starts to spin. You'll know when it's locked in because it won't be able to move. Make sure that's locked in before you wind this back on. Screw that back in, hold your little lock button down again, put your key back in and tighten it. Okay, it doesn't have to be super tight, just firm, right? Your cutting disc is on. You're coming back to where you've marked here, okay? You are very carefully. I'm not going to do this because I don't want to cut this piece of metal. I'm going to use this for something else. Nice and straight with your face mask on so you don't cop sparks in your face. You are going to run back and forth with it running along that line. Just back and forth gently. You don't put adverse pressure. Let the disc do the cutting. The weight of the angle grinder in your hand is enough. You can put a little bit of pressure down if you want, but don't push excessively. You'll just use your disc faster and you'll put strain on the motor of your angle grinder. You don't need to do it. Just the weight of the angle grinder alone with it running, and just run back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it'll cut through quicker than you realise. Done. This is then cut off, okay? Now, if you bought a set of files, I got this cheap set of files, once again, from good old Aldi years ago. You can hand file this then, okay? Because when this is being cut, it's going to be very sharp on the underside and on the edges. Take your file and just lightly file all around the whole lot. On the corners, here we go. So on the corners, carefully just round those corners off where it's being cut. Same with this side, run along here and along the underside and smooth that all off so there's no metal splinters and no sharp points that you can hurt yourself on, okay? Or anyone else can hurt themselves on if they walk over this when it's in your bedroom. You don't want people, you know, cutting themselves on the metal. Everything's got to be smooth. Now, if you don't want to use a file, once again, take your angle grinder, but this time, sometimes I use hand files for a really nice finish, but they're a bit slow. Take your angle grinder, take the grinding disc, take your cutting disc off, put your grinding disc on, exactly the same as I showed you how to put the cutting disc on, and then you can use your grinder to lightly do the same thing. Okay, run along the top, run along the bottom, run around the corners, and round everything off. Make it nice and round and nice and safe. Okay, that's what you're going to do, and you'll be doing this pretty much with all of your metal through the whole build. That's what you're going to do. You're going to clean up your cuts and make sure that they're nice and round, nice and safe and shard free. Okay, very good. Let's talk about the front stabilizer now. We're going to pretend that this little bit of offcut I've got here, we're going to pretend this is 400 millimeters long. This is the piece of offcut you're going to have left after cutting your 2 meter length at 1600. This 400 millimeter length, 75 by 5 millimeter, that's going to become your front stabilizer foot, for want of a better word. What you're going to need to do is you're going to need to measure 200 millimeters. So you're going to need to find the center of your 400 millimeter piece, and you're going to mark it right at the top. Just a little mark at 200 millimeters. Okay, measure 200 millimeters along, which will be the center of. It's half of 400. It'll be the center. Trust me. Mark it with your Sharpie. do a nice little mark so then you know where the center of your 400mm piece of stabilizer foot is going to be. Right, you're going to bring it down. You're going to slide it under. Well, actually, sorry. Before you slide it under, you're going to find the center, which is 37.5 of your 75mm spine at the front. Right, so you've got to ignore this pivot point here. This is not going to be on yours yet, okay? You're just going to have your spine coming here with nothing here. You're going to slide, well, even before you slide this under, you're going to measure 37.5 and you're going to mark that. So then when you put your 400mm piece here with your 200mm mark, you're going to line that 200mm mark up with the center of this, so then this is exactly centered. All right, simple as that. So then it's centered. You can get your square. You can put your square along your spine to make sure that this is square and not crooked when you put it on. Okay, it's lined up. The two marks are lined up. The center of your 75 is lined up with the center of your 400. Right, make sure it's square, so then it's not sitting crooked. Right, you don't want it like this or like that. You want it nice and square. You can use your squares to square that. If you're working on the floor like I am, I'm using a piece of metal here to keep it off the concrete when I weld it, because I don't want heat in my concrete in case my concrete cracks. Put something to just lift it off, and then we're ready to basically tack that into position. Let's talk about that now. Okay, so here we are, guys. We're going to tack our stabilizer into place. So what I've got here set up, I'm doing this on the floor. I've got a block of wood under my stabilizer here, and under my length of 1600. I've lined it up exactly to be in the middle like I showed you. I've got a block of wood underneath so it's off the concrete and I'm not putting heat into the concrete. We want to clean up where we're going to weld here. I would recommend, once you've lined this up, once you've basically got it lined up, worked out where it's going to sit, you could mark with your Sharpie where it's going to sit and where the areas are that you're going to weld, and then you could take it apart, clean it up with your angle grinder or a wire brush. You want to make sure it is nice and clean, so then when you go to weld, you're not polluting your weld. All right, you want to get that mill scale, any of the junk. Angle grinder's going to do a much better job. And I'd recommend doctoring it up before you weld it. Work out where the areas are on your stabilizer, on your 400mm piece, where they're going to intersect with your 1600mm spine. Mark it with a pen, take it apart, and then get your grinder and just clean a section. Run the grinder then along the edge of your 1600mm where it's going to intersect. Clean that up. Make sure you've got shiny metal like what you can see there. I do highly recommend that you trawl YouTube and start looking at some welding videos. There's some excellent welding videos with guys that weld just as well as I do. And I'm not going to take you through really intense welding training. I'm just going to give you some basic tips, but you can bring yourself up to speed by spending the time and finding some good welding videos, okay? At this stage, you've got your gloves on. You've got a long sleeve shirt, cotton, okay? You're going to get a lot of spark. You don't want to burn yourself. You want long pants. You've got those on, you've got your gloves on, and you've got your welding helmet on. You've bought those as recommended in what tools you'll need. You've got them on. My MIG welder, my wire speed and my voltage is set at 12 o'clock. Pretty much have it sitting on that all the time for most of the metal that I weld, okay? So the 3 tacks that I do here on both sides, you will then turn this over once it's tacked on this side. You'll turn it over, and then on the other side across this way, where this intersects along the underside, you'll tack 3 on this, 3 on the front. And that's going to give you more than enough. I've got about 15mm of gasless MIG wire protruding there. You don't want any more than that. And we're going to tack at the front, we're going to tack in the middle, and we're going to tack at the end on both sides. But what we're going to do before we do anything is we're going to tack one in the middle on this side, then we're going to go to the other side and tack one in the middle on the other side. So then our metal can't twist. And just do your first tack on one side and then quickly go to the other side in the middle and do your next tack diagonally opposite that tack. That'll be enough to hold that piece of metal so it won't move for any more of the welds that you do. We don't do one side, because what will happen is when we do this side, when this heats up, it's going to pull the metal out of shape. My earth, all right, or the clamp that comes with your welder that's clamped onto this piece, back here where you can't see it, it's just as important for where that clamps, for that surface to be clean as well, not just where you weld. So wherever you're going to put your clamp on any of your build, I highly recommend that you take your angle grinder with a grinding disc and you grind a little area. See that nice shiny area there now? So then when your clamp goes on, it's going onto a nice clean surface so you get a really good earth. Otherwise this will not work as easily. It won't arc as easily. It'll be a bit harder to use. So prep for welding, like anything that you do, painting, whatever you do, prep is the most time consuming part, but the most important part for a good end result. Okay, so now with these things in mind, you know how much wire to let come through your MIG? This is your button on your MIG. As soon as you press that and it touches metal, when you've got that ground clamp on, it's gonna create the arc and it's gonna start fusing metal, because this wire here is melting between these two, so that it's melting these two pieces together, and this is also melting and filling our area here. That's what's happening with welding, or with what we like to call gluing metal together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now tack this, and what I want you to do is I want you to observe, and I want you to count how long I hold my MIG welder on for. So when I press this button here, that's going to send voltage to my wire, because we're tacking it basically 12 times, which is going to be more than enough to hold this stabilizer in place. And I've only got 6 tacks on this on the underside, and I've been using this sim for a couple of weeks now without any drama. So I'm just doing this just for a little bit more peace of mind and give this a little bit more strength, and I would recommend you do the same. You're going to count how long that I do my tack for, all right? You'll bring your auto shade down. See that? And then we go straight to the other side. And we do the same. We've got a very good tack, both sides. That's now going to hold that piece of metal so it can't go anywhere for all the rest of our welding, all right? I don't know if you can see there, but as I'm welding, okay, as I'm doing these tacks, I'm not just holding it straight. I'm rotating the nozzle a tiny little bit, so it's distributing that wire as it's melting between the two pieces. It's distributing it a little bit wider than what it would do if you just kept it stationary. I'm just going to do the other side, then we're going to move on. Gee, that was a left-handed weld. Rightio, let me show you what we've just done. Mummy, look what I've done. Okay, 3 nice tacks. 3 nice tacks. Very important then to get your wire brush. You are going to get that slag off straight away. Now, with MIG wire, it comes off a lot easier than if we were stick welding. We'd have to use the slag hammer. You want to get that slag off, the flux. You need to get that off. That's what ends up corroding your welds. As you can see, nice, strong, clean tacks on both sides. Okay, once that's on like that, you're going to flip the whole piece over, and then you're going to do exactly the same along this section here, and I've already done the front of mine, and along the front. Rightio. That's your 400mm stabilizer, centered and welded in place. You're halfway there. Now, one thing I just do want to tack on to the end here, I should have mentioned this earlier with the welding. Please, when you're welding, guys, you do need to weld in a well-ventilated area. Okay, I would recommend actually using some type of fan. Okay, I've got this fan here that I use sometimes on my workbench. If I'm lazy and I get lazy and I don't run my evac system, which I've got, I'll just run a little fan in my workpiece. Anything that basically can blow the fumes away from where I'm breathing. Okay, so even if you've got a little electric fan, plug that in somewhere, run it towards your workpiece. You don't have to have it super close to your workpiece, just enough so it's blowing the fumes away from your face, so you're not sucking in fumes unnecessarily. And as I said before, certainly do not use any solvents or anything on any of the metal that you're using to clean the metal. You don't need to do that. Wire brush and angle grinder is all you need to get clean metal. You do not use solvents, and welder, you're just going to create even worse fumes that you're going to breathe in, and you may end up one day on chemotherapy for your lungs. We don't want that. Well, that's it, guys, for part 1 of our 3-degree of freedom motion platform base plate build. Just very quickly though, before we go, let's talk about what I was talking about earlier with the clamp. Okay, so if we have a look here, you can see here, this is what I'm talking about with our clamp, with our earth clamp from our welder. We just need to make sure anything that we're going to weld, that clamp has got a nice clean surface it's clamping to, okay? That way you're not going to have any issues with getting the welder to arc and work without problems. Preparation is so important with that sort of stuff. Okay, next video should be in about a week's time, and we will tackle our traction loss base plate and the bracket to run our rod that allows our yaw, our push and our pull. Should be in about a week's time, maybe earlier. I'll see how I'm going. I'll see if I can get that out a bit earlier. I want to just say a big thank you to everyone who's subscribed already. Really appreciate you guys. And anyone that's watching and following this build, do us a favour, subscribe. I'm helping you guys out. Help me out and subscribe. Maybe a good idea to hit that bell so then you get notified when the next video comes out, and you don't just have to come back here looking randomly. You'll get a notification when the next build video comes out. Rightio. Again, guys, thanks for tuning in. See you in about a week's time with our traction loss plate build and how we connect everything at the end there to get that all working. Peace out.